Hi, my interpersonal communication class. I hope you're all well. I want to do a recap because I know I haven't really been videoing any of my thoughts to you, just putting up my notes, and that's not fair. One of my biggest problems is I edit out my own videos. Like I produce them and they think, oh, who's going to listen to that? I think I'm missing being in the classroom, but I think it's important for me to go backwards for just a second and talk about the communication model. You've read what I put up. You start to understand some of the vocabulary, the sender, the receiver, encoding, decoding, shared meaning, whatever you gleaned out of it is I hope what you understand, that any communication is about connection. And in interpersonal especially, it's a knowing connection. Like, you know each other pretty well. So you can communicate even without words. As a matter of fact, when anybody in the research department starts looking at what is an effective communication, how does it break down, it is divided into three parts: the verbal and the visual and the vocal. The vocal and the visual are called nonverbal communication. So sometimes you think, oh, it's verbal and nonverbal, but it's really three parts. And it's important to know that each one does not have equal significance as far as the weight is concerned. In fact, they say that initially in a conversation, your initial first impression is more on what people see as your visual, your facial expressions, your body language, your hand gesturing, positioning in the room, the context, the environment in which you're presenting and what you're talking about, whatever the conversation is, the channel you're using. Is it going to be phone? Is it going to be Skype? Is it going to be face-to-face? And if it is face-to-face, are you being interrupted by anything, or are you really paying attention to the person, right? So the visual is so important. And they say that's 55% of the effectiveness, followed by the vocal, which are the emotions, the sound of the voice, the rate of delivery, the emotions. Are you sarcastic? Are you loving? Are you being genuine and sincere? Are you just just quickly getting through a message to somebody? 38%. And 7% the words themselves. So the words are important, and next week we're going to be talking about the power of words. In fact, maybe, I don't even know when you're watching this video, it might be right now. This is so important. But it is the nonverbal that conveys a lot of the meat of a message, especially when you know someone. When you know somebody very well, you are a nonverbal communication expert with that person. When you get a phone call from one of your thous or a good friend, and you just hear the sound of the voice, you can already judge determine what kind of a day they're having, or what mood they're in, or did something wrong happen, because we pick this up. Because when we receive messages, it's not just what we hear, it's what we see and what we feel, the emotions. So your heart is part of this. And then other people go into another realm and they talk about the sixth sense, your vibrations, like the aura, and then smells. Many scientists talk about the pheromones between people, so that we can have more babies, right? So everything is connected, and there's so many different layers. If you start analyzing it, you wouldn't be able to function. So they happen in a nanosecond. So do look at that communication model. And when they say that you are the source and the receiver at the exact same time, that is always true, even in public speaking. But really, in interpersonal, you can see it. Even if you're the one speaking, you're still receiving messages, always, right? So you're always encoding and decoding at the same time. And where your intended messages overlap, the connection between you and another person or a small group of you, that's the communication. So it's not just what you say, how you say it, but what's been received and connected. So it's important to know that that element of being a human being is a huge part of all relationships. And there's no wonder why we have so much miscommunication, because it takes time. It takes a lot of time to really understand another person, to want to get the messages correct, right? And on the same page. And when we know each other really well, we assume things. And when we're wrong, things can really go off track. So that's important. And I'm looking at the model I set up there, and I said, just want to go through with that. And then the 8 principles of interpersonal communication. I never really went through these with you, but I'm hoping that you took time to look at them. And as I look through them, I think some of them are self-explanatory. We cannot not communicate. That has to do with the nonverbal, right? And the visual specifically. Interpersonal communication is irreversible. When something is said, you can't reverse it. You can apologize, you can elaborate, and that's what we all do. We live in our life of trying to make sure we didn't hurt people's feelings. It's important, right? To reevaluate, to regroup, and to move on, and to forgive. So that's all part of that it's irreversible. And then interpersonal communication involves ethical choices. This is when you get to the art of living, because your ethics and my ethics might be different. I have a religious background. I do believe in Moses and the Ten Commandments, and a lot of my ethics comes from that from a long time ago. It's my belief system, but not everyone shares that. So you really have to understand where people's principles are, where their true north is, like what they believe is right and wrong, and it's not going to be the same for everyone. So your choices that you make are important. My granddaughter, who's 4, says you make green choices and red choices are not good and green are good. But that's according to whom? That's according to her preschool teacher, right? And to her parents. And so her life is being created by this social construction. And it's very important to know that it is a choice. You create your own reality. That is so true. And that brings us to the next one, when it says people construct meanings in interpersonal communication. Absolutely. Every relationship I'm in has its own set of rules, ethics, and construction of meetings. Absolutely. And there's a lot of examples of that. In my friendships with my friends, we have some rules of ethics, and we see each other as often as we can in this pandemic, and that's because we see seeing each other as a construction of how we want our relationship to continue. But everyone has a different set of parameters, and their paradigm is different. So it's people constructed. Society constructs rules too. You know, we look at our entire problems we've had with poverty. Well, there's social construction, how people view people who are on welfare or they consider poor, how people see them. I try very hard to spend as many hours I can a week, especially now on the weekend, with different food drives and clothing drives to help people. That not that I feel sorry for people, but I have compassion for people who are less fortunate than I am. So I'm always trying to look at that and say no one is better than anyone else, but if I can possibly help. And that's an important part of my construction, how I see my world, is that we're here to serve and to share whatever we have. And I've had my receiving end of people sharing with me, maybe not material, but emotional support, guidance, affiliation, very important, right, that we share and we reciprocate. So we're all on this planet together, here to be with each other, but that's my social construction. That's what I see as important. You know, I don't look down on someone who may not have as much money as I do, because it's not about that. It's the value of human beings, etc. I could go on. This is not a psychology class or sociology class, but you can see where communication goes into the behavioral and social sciences, absolutely. And then meta communication affects meanings, and that means meta means beyond or about. So it's not even what's said or how it's said, but that the communication is even happening at all. And when social media really became popular in about 2004, maybe a little earlier than that, people talked about the meta communication. It wasn't just what you were saying, but how much we were disclosing on these public sites. And it became a much more of a dialogue of how is this affecting your interpersonal face-to-face relationships. Then interpersonal communication develops and sustains relationships. I believe that. I believe you need the connections to be reinforced, but to understand what your thous or your yous or your friends and family need. And not everyone has the same needs. So it's very important to understand to whom are you trying to connect to and what would be of value for that particular relationship. And it can change, right? You're a different person with different people, and that's good. That's for a reason. And then number 7 says that interpersonal communication is not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. Even if you follow the laws and the books, it doesn't mean that your life is going to be happily ever after. You have to keep working at it every day, every day. And then number 8 says that effectiveness can be learned by wanting to learn, asking questions, being vulnerable, being awkward and brave, and being able to find out through personal conversations. Some people go for different help, like you go for social workers or for therapists, mental health workers, that I find incredibly helpful when people are having issues in their interpersonal, either being on work related. You might need someone from HR to come in to help mediate a problem, or you go for marriage counseling or couples counseling. I think it's very important, and I think that it can be helpful to the right people. And then in week 3, the notes I put up here. First of all, there's a definition of interpersonal communication that might have thrown you for a little bit, because it talks about, it's only one sentence, but it says interpersonal communication is the process of 2 or 3 people exchanging messages in order to share meaning, right? Create understanding and develop relationships. I really like that definition, because to me that's clear and concise. But the 2 to 3 people, sometimes you might find, if you read enough about interpersonal in the books and literature, on YouTube videos, that you think, well, isn't it about small groups of people that care about each other? And that's what I say all the time. A family of 6 is having interpersonal relationships all the time. But what the scholars say, the people who really study this, they say that's not quite. Within a group, let's say you have 6 people in your family, there's more than likely going to be subsections of that. 2 people that spend a lot more time and have more rapport, shared confidences than the whole group. It's very hard to have the same amount of intimacy with a group as you can with 2 or 3 people. So by definition, interpersonal communication in this definition is just really small groups. Dyads, 2 people, or very small groups. So it all depends. Everyone has different relationships. I know in my family, I find that my brother, we're both middle children, and we're very close. Where my younger sister and my older brother, not as much. So even though I see them as thous, we don't have the same intimacy. We don't have the same exchange of information. We don't understand each other. We don't have as much in common. So we have a whole different relationship. And there's nothing, it's not good or bad. It's just what it is. And that's another thing, you don't judge. But then when it comes down to the functions of interpersonal, this answers the question, like, why do we care? Why do we need relationships in the first place? And on all the literature gives us 3 different reasons. They talk about control, affiliation, and goal achievement. And when you read the paragraph on each one, look up more information if you want about that. But I don't need you for this class to get into great detail on this. The idea of control, they say every relationship, every dyad, there's someone who's got control of something, and someone else has control of something else. It doesn't mean it's dominance, although one could be dominant. It just means that's how the nature of relationships work. And they say, like, the doctor-patient relationship, the parent-child relationship. But even when you think you have the exact same level of control, if you want to use that word again, it's like you still have different areas you might be more in charge of than somebody else to help it work. Like in my relationship with my boyfriend, he's the cook and I'm the shopper. So the control there, to put it really simply, right, to make it very like a clear thing, is I go for the groceries and he cooks. If one of us doesn't do the other, it's not going to work. And that's a very limited, primitive example, but there's that responsibility each has. In a household, there are probably chores, task distribution, what you're expecting of each other. Someone who plans the vacations and someone who puts the details in, right? I'm the big picture person, and my boyfriend is the detail person. So we each have control, or we have contribution to the relationship at certain places. So just realize that's what that means. Affiliation is friendship. It's emotional. It's how we need each other. No man is an island. Very important. And goal achievement. How do you get going? How do you have a house? How do you have a mortgage to pay? How do you have go to college? How do you figure out who's paying for tuition? Goal achievement is very important. And it's not always physical money or that kind of help. It's emotional support. It's so important. So do we need each other? You bet we do. Now, the Myers-Briggs, some people had a lot of fun with it. I'm not a psychology teacher. I'm not trying to teach you about Myers or Briggs or Carl Jung. None of that. I just wanted you to understand in this little simple exercise that personality is part of our relationships. And sometimes when we're who we're attracted to, who we find we have good collegiality with, are people that match or maybe just a little bit different than us but understand us. And if you understand people through personality, it can help a lot. It can help understand that why you don't always see eye to eye, or you're not going to be exactly like the next person, because we have different ways, like introvert, extrovert, how we get our energy. If you're sensing or intuitive, what do you pay attention to? How do you make your decisions? Are you a thinker or a feeler? And then what's your lifestyle like? Are you like it organized and planned out? Are you when someone who wants it to be judged, or are you perceiving, you go with the flow? Now, there's no right or there's no wrong, but if you put these all together, they form 16 different personality types. And there's a lot of psychology that goes into it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the discussion. I think it's really fun when you talk to your family and your thous about it, your friends, and you can share notes. And there are many different psychology exams or inventories out there. There's one that gives you a number, 1 through 9. I forget what the name of it is, but it's been around for about 40 years. It's kind of fun too. And back in my day, we used to share each other's astrological charts and say, are you a Libra? Are you an Aquarius? And we thought we were going to get to know each other that way. It's just a way of understanding that we're all unique and very special. Okay, week 4 is the power of words, and I will do more videos if you don't mind these. I like the way I think I'm having a conversation. I can see you almost through my magic screen. I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're still in school. I know some people are telling me they've dropped out of some of those classes because it was way more than they thought it was going to be. I know it is. Take it folder by folder. Enjoy the discussion boards and the journals. And I'm looking forward to someday seeing you, meeting you, even if it's only on Zoom. Thank you, everyone.